wonderful showing out of Union Blue tonight. Those who this is your first time joining us for negotiations, I always start with some shout outs and thank yous. So obviously a shout out and thank you to all of the people who just walked in the hot sun to get here and then did such a wonderful job of coming in an orderly fashion, and to the people who are in the standing room and the gallery upstairs, like shout out to you. This is exciting stuff. I think that it's really important to acknowledge that not a lot of unions do this, and not a lot of districts are willing to do this. And we just really appreciate the fact that we have had that we've been engaged in such an inclusive, democratic negotiations process, and we're really changing the way that we do this, and it is just big. I want to give a shout out. So I want to give a shout out to some folks who I hope are watching at home and who may hear that they got a shout out if they're not watching at the moment. I want to shout out to some union siblings in the state of Massachusetts. Last week, the presidents of the Andover Teachers Union, the Brookline Teachers Union, and the Newton Teachers Union met with members of our union to talk about negotiations and to talk about they've recently been engaged in some really high profile negotiations, and we had an opportunity to learn with them, and it was a really amazing experience for us, and we just want to say thank you to them. And we also want to give a big thank you. Just last week, maybe a week and a half ago, NYSET Legislative started amplifying a bill that is swiftly moving through our state legislative halls, a bill on AI protections that matches pretty closely with the conversations we've been having about our members' need for AI protections. And in fact, that NYSET legislative action helped us to revise our proposal that we brought to the table tonight, because one of the things we talked about was not knowing what the policy and legislation would be saying. So now we have a pretty good idea. And let's make sure that Gladira gets a seat, everybody, with a place to put a computer. And then just some rules of the room. I know that David gave everybody a little brief of the tone. We do have a note passing procedure that we use. So if you are here in the gallery and wanting to get a message to the floor, there are note cards all around. It is very helpful if you write your name on your note card so that we know who the note came from. If you've written a note and you hold it up, our note runners, who are our note runners today? We've got Jen over here as a note runner. Do we have any note runners over here? Carrie's going to run notes for us over on this side. Hold up your note, and Carrie or Jen will bring it down to David just to keep, some order going on. We do have all ITA members. If we do caucus, we usually caucus across the hall. We may need to find a bigger space. We'll figure that out if we need to. But any ITA member who's here today is welcome to join us in any caucuses. And then we have a couple of note takers doing just incredible work. Tonight we've got Gretchen leading notes. Who else is on it? And Gary is working on notes, and Aurora is not taking notes today. Aurora is and that's it for housekeeping on our end. Anything?
No, just thank you everybody for being here. If you do need to caucus, I think it'd probably be easier if we left and you all stay here. But it's really good to see everybody. A lot of colleagues that have, we've gone through long careers with, and some new folks here. So it's good to have the energy. Thank you.
Oh, yes. And one more reminder that we cannot have peanuts in this space due to allergy concerns. So no peanuts or nuts of any kind in the space. Okay. So getting into our agenda, for people who are following the agenda, we have a whole section of tabled proposals that we will not be starting with today. So we're starting down towards the bottom of the agenda. We have had salary and years of agreement proposals on the table as our first thing to talk about, but I am noticing when we last left this room, Dr. Brown said that today we would either have acceptance or a counter proposal on the ITA salary proposal. And seeing no counter proposal, I am wondering, does that mean we have acceptance?
No, no, we do not, but I understand technicalities.
I am not surprised.
We don't have a counter proposal today, but we are interested. We understand that some of the data that we sent last time may have, ITA might have formulated something from that. So
Yeah, so I was kind of expecting that, and I was thinking maybe because I know that we have some of our proposals that have just been jointly revised, that we might be able to go through those before presenting all of that data, and then kind of like present the data and give you all time to determine if you want to use that to take a caucus to work on a counter proposal or something like that. Is that okay? Or do you want us to jump right into salary first?
I heard jump right in from the from the gallery, but I think we're fine either way. Whatever way you'd like to present is fine.
Um, let's just take a look at, we have a duty clarification for RSPs, proposal 47, which is in our packets on page 17. So this is a joint revision. Mary and Jake met. Last time we talked, this proposal was putting an amount of minutes for weekly RSP scheduling, but we revised it jointly to reflect the option to use a 3-to-1 model, just to give a little bit more flexibility and some more options. So what you see in blue is just those updates that Jake and Mary worked on together. So having read this and our team has looked at it, we are fine with all of those revisions.
We are too.
Excellent. So we have a tentative agreement. And they brought a bell this time.
Thank you, Jacob.
Oh, you actually have a bell. All right. Right.
Okay, on page 19, this is the latest version of the protections against AI outsourcing. So hearing the concern that we didn't know where the legislation was going, we did some research, we found out where the legislation was going, and the blue at the bottom is pulled exactly from the bill. I also gave you the legislative bill. I gave you the Senate version, but the Assembly version is the same. And as of this morning, this bill was in committee, but it has already moved through a number of committees pretty quickly. So not resolved, but moving fast. And the nature of the bill is to protect, they basically have defined artificial intelligence systems and automated decision-making tools, basically as any program that they're targeting any program that removes human decision-making from operation. And what that bill says is that artificial intelligence systems and automated decision-making tools shall not result in the discharge, displacement, or loss of position, including displacement such as a reduction in hours, wages, or employment benefits due to the members of this unit, nor shall these aforementioned systems result in the transfer of duties or functions performed by members of the unit to artificial intelligence systems or automated decision-making tools pursuant to education law. And we did have an agreement to not use legal language unless we need to use legal language. We chose to use the legal language because it is the same as the bill language.
Thank you. We appreciate all the work you've done and as well as NICET at the Albany level, are appreciative of that. For those of us old enough, when we're reviewing this, we were reminded of the Saturday morning cartoon that it's just a bill right now. And we feel, yeah, someone remembers, we feel like it'd be premature. Probably like we all thought the state is going to preempt this discussion and come down with legislation. And what we would like to do is wait for that to actually happen. It looks like it's moving relatively quickly. And then the Board of Education may do policy for the entire district. We're not quite sure. Obviously, this is being championed by NICET teacher union, et cetera, but it could cover many more of our employees than just that. So I think right now we just would like to take a wait and see approach and make sure the final legislation we follow when it comes out.
I think we're going to reserve the right to keep it
Yeah, sure.
while we're waiting for that to happen, until we ratify. But I understand the sentiment and appreciate it. So moving on to page 28, 29, 29, if my pages weren't sticking together. 29. So provide teacher input in selection and development of new curricular programs. Mary, you did some work on this, and then I went in and cleaned up a little bit of it as well, and is pretty much in the same spirit as what we had, but just say kind of being a little bit more clear about when we would use this language, and then also when extra compensated summer planning time, that the compensated planning time before the start of the school year would be summer hours only if they haven't already been provided professional development in other ways. So have you had a chance to look this one over?
Yes, we are in support.
Excellent. So we are
Yeah.
tentatively agreed on providing teacher input in selection and development of new curricular programs. Hit the bell.
Catherine, I want to thank the educators who have been participating in the pilots and the process and giving input and their time and energy to really intentional choices.
Yeah, I think that,
I think this captures that work well.
okay. Yeah, and thank you to the people who really helped do the work with 3 through 5 curriculum, because you created the model for us. So that's awesome. Page 31, we have collaborative master scheduling. And what we did here was we changed the language from teachers will be notified of their teaching assignments by the next school year by June 30th to every effort will be made. And then kept the language about getting paid work days if you find out after June 30th. And I cleaned up to make it more clear that if a notification involves an inclusion assignment, all teachers affected will be provided those days. Good.
This one, I'm closer to the mic. So this one, we really appreciate the spirit, and also we know the current practice, the date is August 15th.
The contract currently
And-
says June 30th.
Oh,
The contract, but
The
you're,
contract currently says you'll be notified by June 30th, but if you're told
But the
after
paid-
August,
yeah,
5th, you'll get
yeah.
paid.
So that's the piece. So I think that's the date that to maintain the 15th and keep the 30th is when you're notified, but for.
So you're
additional
saying
paid
on
payment
that
be the 15th.
bullet, if
Yeah.
a returning teacher is notified
Yeah.
after August 15th?
Mhm.
And we're okay with, if it's an inclusion assignment, to keep both or keep all involved
Mhm.
that,
okay.
but yeah, but it would still be June. It'd be
for August 15th.
August 15th, but yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
We are okay with that.
Great. Thanks.
And then there was secondary department leaders, basically just kind of outlining the elections process, because right now we have that elections process outlined in our bylaws, not in the contract. So we want to put everything into one place. And then there are some pieces about the work and release. A lot of it is similar, and a lot of it reflects the practice of what department leaders are currently doing at the secondary level. Good.
So
Okay.
there's a couple of things. So maybe we could just go through these like items and bullets, because we're not necessarily opposed to anything specifically, but there's some discussion to be had. So for elections, currently for number 1, the change here is just, we've talked about the LACS process for teacher leaders. So we're just codifying that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're fine. We're fine with that part.
Okay.
What's For number two, how does this represent a shift from, are we,
So,
Explain that to me.
currently we don't have.
At this time, all students who are not in supervised activities with IHS adults need to begin exiting the campus. If you are waiting for practice or ready to be picked up, you can leave before you're in front of the welcome center. No student should be inside any building or the quad after 4 o'clock. If you take in the late bus, please check the bus test ready with your address on and report to the bus personnel. Thank you.
So currently, we don't have a written definition of what determines whether or not you are a part of a department. I've heard some people say it is it's determined by your tenure area, which no one is tenured in AIS, so.
right?
But we have AIS departments. I've heard some people say it's by your certification area, but if you're a world language teacher, you may have many different certifications. So what this does is it says that we are grouping teachers that share a common discipline, tenure area, or teaching purpose by mutual agreement between the teachers of the association and the building leadership. That gives each building flexibility to
discretion.
say, you know, we really need a this department because that's what works for our building, and it doesn't necessarily need to be consistent from building to building. Give some discretion. And it says that teachers are assigned to you must be assigned to at least one department. No department can have fewer than 2 members, but teachers are assigned to all departments that they teach classes in. So again, and they vote proportionally with their FTE. So AIS is a really good example. When I worked at DeWitt, at one point we had 18 different teachers teaching AIS labs. Now they were only teaching one section of lab each, but the department leader needed to manage the needs of 18 different people. But because those people were not voting on who the department leader was, it wasn't really democratic. And because the department was only recognized as the reading teachers at the time, that teacher was servicing the needs of a department of 18 while being considered a department of 3. And we just didn't feel like that was really helpful. And in fact, that department leader has since left our district, that being one of the reasons they left. So we just want really, if you work in a department, you should be represented by the department and you should have a say in the election in the department.
Okay, and then so you're saying that you had said no department shall have fewer than 2 members. You're saying, but that's should it be 3 then? Or you're saying it's not possible? Because you're just saying that.
It shouldn't be 1.
Got it. Okay, as long as there's.
You can't be a department of 1.
No, I mean, in a very small school, perhaps, it would be tough. I've been there.
And then that's what those departments can be arranged across buildings in the case of specialty areas. So I'm thinking of my friend Hannah over my shoulder, who's the only ENL teacher over at Boynton, who could then choose whether to combine with, you know, Carol and Teresa to be an ENL department or to join a services department at Boynton, like just giving discretion to
Yeah.
get people
So
into the groupings.
The only modification I would propose is, I mean, and it doesn't really matter too much. We say building leadership. If we're doing multiple like departments, it might be a more, sometimes we'll have like an ENL coordinator for the district, or so maybe it could just be, you know, district or building leadership would be the shift on that, like that language.
And so you're saying into put district or?
I
Building?
think so. And then, you know, similarly, I wonder if 2 is already, we can leave 3 there as well. Does it become redundant if we say that? There's no problem with number 3 there, but it's just saying departments can be arranged across
I
buildings.
think we just leave it to make sure that it's clear.
Okay.
One thing I'd ask is, I really like the language where you talk about mutual agreement between teachers and building leaders. What happens if there isn't agreement in where a teacher fits in terms of a department?
I think that's why we have an elections chair. And we have a grievance policy that is to resolve things collaboratively as often as possible. I anticipate that these would be pretty easy to resolve, to just say who are the people in a department.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So if that's the case, I think is fine.
Okay. Anything in the B section, the duties of department leaders?
I mean, might be a longer discussion, but a lot of work is being done, I know, for department leaders around sort of like district instructional initiatives. And I know that's maybe a different conversation to have with the leaders at the building level, but that isn't necessarily mentioned here. Can you speak to that?
We took kind of what we already had, but we also have an agreement to revisit. So in the contract, we have this piece, but then we have a rubric for department leader evaluations that is outdated and really
Yes.
weird.
I'd love, yeah,
And
revive that.
And we agreed to revise that during APPR negotiation.
Great.
So I'm thinking that rather than, because we haven't done that work yet, and we plan to do that work, and it's going to be collaborative, if we need to come back and change this list of duties via MOA after we've done the APPR work, that makes more sense than I think preemptively trying to define, like, let's leave the duties as they are, do the work to determine through the APPR piece and kind of use the backwards design element as opposed to front loading it.
Okay, maybe because I just like having these discussions, but there should be an instructional component at some point, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think we're in agreement.
Great. All right, and then for the screening and interviewing applicants, I know that's something we definitely want to have happen, so that's fine. And then the timesheets for up to 30 hours of work on during the summer for master scheduling. Talk to us a little bit about the thought behind that.
I think that that if every effort is made to put people where they need to be by June 30th, we're never going to need this. And if a master schedule can't come together before June 30th for whatever reason, then the people who are going to be doing the work are the department leaders on their summer vacations.
And then,
So I think it can be controlled for.
okay. And then with that, so the building still is gonna, like, the building leadership will still own the process of the master scheduling, but on an as needed basis, the department leader might be called in, like, hey, can you help me figure out this department?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if we need to call you in to figure out the scheduling of this department off of your unpaid summer vacation, we will
All right.
pay you, but we're not going to have you for more than 30 hours.
Could we clarify then to just take out the two words as needed?
Yeah. We can say as requested.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
And then the last piece is master schedule alterations greater than 5 minutes per period must be negotiated with the Ithaca Teachers Association president. We talked about this earlier in the year.
We resolved that via
Right.
grievance.
And we said must?
We did.
I thought it was, I don't think I would like to review that maybe during our, you are impeccable with your grievance resolve, so I'm not doubting you there.
Thank you.
But I'd like to just review a couple.
I
on my
bet
side.
that Jake is probably looking it up already as our
Great.
PPR and our chair, or
Awesome.
David behind me is, so we can probably have an answer pretty quickly to that.
Okay.
one.
I just want to clarify too, if a building administrator needs to have a teacher leader come in over the summer, can the teacher leader say, I'm not doing it? Or is this language like you shall, but the maximum is 30
So
hours?
requested gives them the authority to say no. And and the fact that they're 10-month employees gives them the ability to
Right.
say no.
Kind of submit.
But if they are requested and they come in, they get paid.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
All right, let's move to 2. Teacher leaders cannot serve as mentors unless no mentor is available probably for really small departments.
Or departments that have high turnover.
Sure. I don't see an issue with that unless, are there current mentor, like, would we upset current mentor-mentee relationships that are existing right now?
No, because it's if no other mentors can be found, which means we've already exhausted the potential mentors.
Catherine, just remind us, what is this, what is this trying to solve? Is there,
It was originally in there. I think it comes from leftover language from when department leaders could also do APPR observations.
okay,
But knowing that there are some APPR changes and that peer evaluation is something that we are going to be, like, that's something that we can consider in our APPR revision, and knowing if we're going to be, we want to keep it just
Yeah, no, that
in
makes sense.
case, but that's where the history of it was from.
thank you.
Okay. No questions on that. And then number 3, what's the, can you just map out the shifts or the,
Number 3 goes back to that same piece as in number 1 about if you have 17 members in your department who, but that you as a department leader should be, if there's 17 people voting in your department because there's 17 people with needs in your department, it should be accepted that you are supervising, that you're leading a group of 17. And that people can't be partial people.
oh, okay. Oh, right, because this is if you're split.
Yeah, this is if you're split department. So this is saying that the size of the department is dictated by the number of people teaching classes in the department.
Is
And the
different
same as the
from-
number of voters in the department.
different than the number of voters? Can you repeat
No,
that?
because
Same.
so let's say you're teaching 4 sections of English and 1 section of AIS.
Mhm.
We give 2 votes for every section. So you have 8 votes in the English department and 2 votes in the AIS department. But if you're teaching 1 class in the AIS department and you need the leadership of your department leader, it doesn't matter if you're teaching 1 class or 4 classes. If you don't know how to do AIS reports, you need to learn how to do AIS reports, and your leader is going to be the person who's going to need to support you in that.
And the current practice is that you get to be just in one department.
The current practice is, I mean, in a clean department, it doesn't really matter, but the current practice is in the example that I'm calling on, the department leader was treated as a department of 3. They had release only from supervisory assignment, but then they had to support 17, which would have been released from 2 teaching assignments if they were considered a department of 17. So it's, the time it takes to support people is significant, especially when we have such limited time and flexibility at the secondary level.
Okay,
Um,
so if you have a department of 17 full-time, you're requesting that we treat 17 where some of them could be part-time in your department
Yeah,
as full, okay.
We're saying that if
Okay.
you have needs,
Yeah,
they're not partial needs. Your needs, you're still a person with needs.
gotcha.
And in some of those departments where you have the partial, like often if you're teaching 1 section off your department, you're gonna have needs, right? Because you don't already have that history, and it's probably an off area, it might be an off certification area. So we would just want to make sure that those people are supported appropriately.
yeah, the only pause that or not the only, so we're talking probably AIS would be the most impacted area based on what you're saying.
AIS might be impacted. That's the one that comes to my mind. AIS was probably the most significant, but then you might get some combined departments that might have strange things, but
Just trying to think staff
Yeah.
implications for, you know,
Well, I think you
obviously,
control
I
it
understand,
after
there's
scheduling, too.
benefits to this as well, but I'm just trying to think out that.
Yeah.
That might be something that we'd have to just do a little bit more research on it. We're not necessarily against it, but maybe we'll come back on the implications for this part.
Yep. And Jake did check the grievance, and it says changes to a master schedule that include changing the length of periods beyond 5 minutes must be reviewed for CBA compliance by ITA.
Right. So you had written negotiated and we said
Yeah.
reviewed. So you wrote negotiated in here
Oh.
and reviewed. That's what I was getting at.
Sorry. Must be reviewed.
Great.
And Carrie is also reminding me that special ed is another department where
Yeah.
this type of stuff happens.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look into that.
So you're gonna take a look at it and maybe bring back some counter language or?
Yeah. Yeah. Just sort of we can
Okay.
come back.
Okay, and the next ones are ones that have been controversial before, so we'll deal with them as we go. So proposal 20 is adding domestic partners to health insurance. We have made no changes. We still need to be able to add domestic partners to health insurance. One thing that is of note is that in our contract, we do offer domestic partner coverage on dental and domestic partner coverage on vision, just not on major medical. So that's where we are.
I appreciate that. We're not interested in increasing liability to the plan at this time. So we're not agreeing to that one.
Okay, we're gonna reserve the right to hold on to
Absolutely.
it. Would you like to talk about leaves of absences and paid parental leave or salary first? Since they're all gonna be controversial. We would like to go salary.
All right. Sure.
And I'd like to bring Brian and Chris up.
Where are we doing for version 4? Is that?
So we've kept version 3 here as well, but we're talking about version 4 is the most recent version. We wanted to give you the options, so.
Okay. I was just, oh,
But we're focused on version 4.
okay. Thank you.
And version 4 starts on page 9 in your packets. Not yet. We're gonna let Brian present some of so Brian's been working with the data that you gave. And then Chris is going to kind of bring it home, and we do have a handout for you so that if you want to use our work as you go on your caucus, we have a handout. I did not make a worksheet though. I didn't know how to. I wouldn't know what you needed.
Say that one more time. I haven't seen it yet. No. So you just have seen it. Even an alternate idea. You're saying I should leave and come back in? Just do Apple. When you get pick that up, just do Apple. Or Windows. Right here? Yeah. So that'll just be us, certainly. Yeah, for now, okay, yeah. Or we can just duplicate your screen, whatever. Okay, so if I go this, and I do duplicate. Yep, I'll duplicate, so I can just bring it. Oh, okay, yeah. But then I won't be able to have the speaker notes? Yeah. That's a problem. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, the host, and she's not here. She just sent me a suggestion. We'll see. I sent her a message, but we'll see. Yeah, so we're not, unfortunately, so I can't. But what else would this do? Put it up on the screen. I can just find the picture, and then that way. That way, but not. Yeah, yeah.
Well, then let's talk about parental leave first.
No, that's the bell. I don't know if I follow. No, yeah, so if we put the presentation up on the screen, and then instead of having them post, you switch it. I just want to. Being called by Alan. Okay, that's all I had. Sure. Chris, can you pull that up so I can read your note, like the notes from your screen? Okay, take that. So I can do that right now, right?
No, Chris is gonna open it.
Taking a while, Chris. It's the plumbing system, yeah. Very scary. I guess can we drag that up, the notes? Like, you can drag that bar up.
So
Okay.
some of what Brian's gonna present, we've seen some of it before, some of it is based on his analysis of the most recent data. So it's kind of a recap of the salary needs, the proposal, background.
Yeah.
Oh. Not on the iPads. Wait, you can see it
Okay.
on the iPad.
Awesome. So I want to be honest where we are. We are in a teacher retention crisis here in the ICSD. And the ITA negotiations have proposed a viable solution. ICSD negotiations has decided to leave it unsolved. So Chris's and my presentation, it's going to show a few things. It's going to show ICSD's teacher retention crisis is real. It's worsening. It's going to show that the root cause is structural salary failure. It's going to show that ICSD's counterarguments rely on flawed data, faulty logic, and do not solve the crisis. It's going to show that a step in lane system properly funded at a 7% average raise over the next 4 years will solve this crisis. And it's going to show that ICSD can absolutely afford our proposal. Our evidence is overwhelming. Our teacher turnover rate is not, as ICSD negotiations has claimed, just the natural teacher shortage. It's an annual 18%. It's higher than New York State. It's higher than the national average. 10 years ago, 83% of our members were tenured. Today, just 57% are. And for the first time ever, over 100 new teachers were hired 3 years in a row. These aren't new roles, these are replacements. That's churn, that's instability, and that's not how you build a staff that stays. And so to our friends in the gallery, raise your hands if you've anecdotally noticed an increase in your colleagues leaving the ICSD. That looks like 139 hands. Wow, that's a lot. Okay, let's see how that goes. You know the teacher retention crisis to be true because you've seen it, you've felt it. ICSD negotiations has proven it over the past negotiation sessions. And ICSD has never refuted these numbers because they can't. They've claimed there's a national teacher shortage, and sure there is. But why is it worse here? They have no answer. Can you scroll that down, Chris? No, I'll go back and just, yeah, I got it. They've been playing a game of distraction. We showed that there were 133 departures in 2024, and they countered, well, we show 103, and we said, let's work with that. They then used that one discrepancy to cast doubt on everything we presented, as if one adjusted figure erased 10 years of trend lines. They never refuted the big picture that about 60 resignations happen annually. They've confirmed that. They never challenged the tenure drop. They never presented their own exit survey data because they don't have it. And that's been their approach along the way. So we're going to consider a teacher, Joe. Joe moves to Lansing with 3 years prior experience in 2010. He interviews in 5 local school districts, accepting a position in the ICSD. And he assumes that with an Ivy League school in town, his salary will be competitive with neighboring districts. So let's look at Joe's lifetime earnings from 2010 to 2025. Additionally, we'll follow Joe down 5 roads he could have traveled had he made a different decision in 2010. So here we go, going to South Seneca. Over those 15 years, he would have made 72,000 and change more in South Seneca. Can we go on? In Trumansburg, $82,000 more. In Dryden, 86. Corning, $107,000 more over those 15 years. These are not cherry picked. These are the first 5 we looked at. Joe is down. He's lost over a year of salary over his life. That's gone. That's more than a year of college tuition for his now college-age kid. That's a few major home repairs. Over his years in the ICSD, he's seen great colleagues come and go, and he's rebuilt teams more time than he can count. And he's thinking about making the jump to another district, like so many of his colleagues have. We've brought clear salary comparisons. 5 districts where the ICSD teachers have lost up to $100,000 over time. ICSD's answer? Well, we've heard a story about a superintendent's hiring privilege in Lansing, as if that explains why we are being outpaid in all directions at once. Can you scroll it? That's it. They've tried to divide us. ICSD has loudly proclaimed that our step and lane system would give some members 3.5% raises and others 19%. That sounds pretty wild. It's not true. But here's the thing, that ICSD, they believed it was true. Why did they believe it was true? They don't have all of our records. Prior years of service, some of those were never kept. Grad credits, incomplete, spotty. Let's talk about Carrie. ICSD's records say that she has 0 prior years experience and 0 grad credits. So they plugged that in their spreadsheet. They said, well, she'll get a small raise. But the truth, Carrie got married in her first year, changed her last name. ICSD lost track of her actual credits and prior experience. They plugged in zeros. They used that misinformation to argue against fairness. Carrie actually came in with 17 years prior experience, 42 grad credits. And situations like this, they are not a fluke. They are a pattern. We have dozens of situations where they don't have the data. We can find the data, they haven't found it, and they're exaggerating the severity of a step and lane and the disparity of raises. Let's go on to the next one. We're going to talk a little bit about leapfrogging. We've heard a lot about that. This happens constantly. You can do everything right, you can gain years, you can earn credits, and you can still watch someone with less experience make more than you. And that's what leapfrogging is, and that's what our members are living through. When we called out leapfrogging, when we showed hundreds of cases of it, ICSD didn't deny it, they listened. But here's what they didn't say. They didn't say, you're right, the system is broken, let's fix it. They said, instead, bring us your poor, you're leapfrogged, we'll have some conversations. As if we were talking about 5 clerical errors. We are not, we are talking about a systemic problem. We are talking about one that violates the intent of our contract, Article 25A2, and one that's hurting us year after year. And since, and can we just see the back of your t-shirt? What does your t-shirt on the back say? Oh, since teacher working conditions are student learning conditions, that means it's hurting our students and our children. We're talking about hundreds of systematically created situations. ICSD first, if you remember, squabbled about the definition of leapfrogging. Not to fix the retention crisis, but to say that if we change the definition, then we're not culpable. ICSD then said, fine, we're culpable, but you're culpable too. You agreed on this. And again, notice the rhetoric. They're not really negotiating, thinking about what's in the best interest of teachers. They're litigating. They're spreading blame. So they're not at fault for allowing so many employees to be leapfrogged.
Let's go on. Finally, they told us it's their philosophy that someone who earned credits 15 years ago should make more than someone who earned the same credits recently. And ICSD calls this a philosophy, but let's call it what it is. It's a justification for why they don't want to fix the leapfrogging. This isn't about academic theory. It's about two people with the same credits, the same experience, being paid differently because of when they earned them. We all remember what some of that credit earning looked like. You remember Think Blocks? That was a training from over a decade ago involving clear acrylic cubes in a shoebox, or maybe burning a CD or organizing an H drive, or hours and hours of Fountas Spinell training on a theory of literacy instruction that has since been debunked. Now compare that to the deeply reflective anti-racist coursework many of our colleagues are engaging in today. Who's better serving students? The teacher with a closet full of dusty plastic blocks, or the one helping kids interrogate privilege and build inclusive classrooms? This is not a philosophy, it's a justification for inequality. And it's one that the ICSD cannot defend when you actually look at what our profession values today. Your data shows us that under the ICSD's current salary system, salary compression starts right at year 2. There's no built-in way to decompress. This issue will compound over the course of a teacher's career. And I just want to point this out. It's right in the salary grid. Here's Gary. I'm just going to read this. Here's Gary. He comes in 2023. He has no credits, no prior years, and he earns 51,241. That's on our grid. Going into 24, 25, we can take out our phones, do a little math, and do 51,241 times 4%. Gary's going to make this year 53,291. It's his second year. Here comes Larry. 2024, 0 credits, 0 prior years. Larry's going to make 53,291. That's Larry. That's Gary. There are dozens of these situations. Gary should just quit. Come back $800. He had a previous year experience. He can get more money if he just quits and comes back. That's happening right now. This isn't like off the top of our head. That is in your contract. This is happening. Dozens. ICSD is the only local district still operating without a step and lane system. 26 of 34 neighboring districts use one. It ends leapfrogging. It prevents salary compression, and it ends the Gary Larry nonsense. It creates clarity. It creates trust. Why aren't we doing it? We built a plan to fix this. The ICSD offered none. Since our framing of the retention crisis, they've had 9 bargaining sessions to propose solutions. No solutions, no tenable alternative, no evidence. We came to fix a crisis. So here we are, the school year's almost over. While ICSD has refused to solve the problem, we will not stop telling the truth about it. We're the solution, and our students deserve stability. Our community deserves better. Our educators deserve to stay. I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Chris, who's going to explain once more exactly how our plan is not only affordable, but it's sustainable. So let's go to Chris.
Hey, Chris, do you want David to hand out the handout before you speak or after you speak?
That's fine. Well, we can present it as well. Do you want to become a presenter?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
We've had some technical difficulties, but apparently the person managing the remote feed can now make Brian a presenter.
Do you want to hand it out now while he's logging in?
Let's do that.
Okay.
I don't know if I see that box that I can leave and come back in.
Thank you.
Can you say that one more time?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. You don't see that.
Okay, give me one second. She just mentioned co-host stuff.
And I could start projecting that. Yeah, sure. Did that thing come now?
Yeah, that's it. You'll do it.
I did not see it. Is this pretty terrible doing the things we can do?
No.
So maybe we
I mean, it's not great.
I think it's better to present it because it's really hard to like actually read data and numbers.
Got
and see.
it. Should I, would it make sense to leave and return?
Yeah, we try it. You're not getting it, but send it like.
Would it be under here? You know where it might be under there? Okay. Would it make sense? One of them, my calendar, you know that, or however you, if we should, I guess we'll be joining. Yeah.
It was up there for a second. About the thing, it's not. No, you don't have to help. I know it's your natural tendency to.
Fix it.
Oh, here we go. You got it.
Yeah.
Oh, promotion for Brian.
That's it. Let's go.
All right, Brian, thanks for laying that out. For me, the main takeaway from that slideshow is our definition of leapfrogging, which I think is powerful, was well articulated in terms of our philosophy. And I just want to emphasize again, we got the most recent data from the district, the district's most updated and correct data we got 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we based our most recent proposal around that. The main thing we wanted to emphasize from that most updated data, there are hundreds of teachers. Of our 600 members, 400 of them have been leapfrogged. Obviously, it's obscene in year 1 and 2, as Brian pointed out, but a 15 or 16-year teacher like me, on average, is being leapfrogged 8 to 10 times. It's pervasive. And the obvious solution, the only solution, is obviously step and lane. We've talked to the district about this at some length, and I got the impression in our last session that the superintendent was coming around to recognizing that step and lane was the only solution. And then it was becoming a debate over what percentage raise we would need in the step and lane to create some equity and deal with some compression. And we discussed salary at our last session just briefly. And at that time, the superintendent said, you know, before we get in the weeds, let's make sure we're on the same playing field. Like, are we close? The thought was like the gap between our proposal and the ICSD's current offer must be huge. So we spent some time this week looking at it. And what I want to emphasize, I don't see a significant gap. Assuming goodwill on the part of the district, assuming they understand leapfrogging is a significant problem, assuming that they understand we're losing a ridiculous number of teachers and that our pay isn't competitive, the solution is, I mean, it's staring you in the face. And to be blunt, I think our team, I personally was disappointed that the district didn't bring any kind of counteroffer to today, which is our second to last negotiation session. That, I guess I won't elaborate further. It won't be constructive. But what I want to emphasize today to the district team is that we're remarkably close together and the solution is within your grasp. I certainly hope you present it to us at the meeting next Thursday.
So you're talking about those green numbers there?
Yeah, let me-
Being a difference.
Let me, so Brian is my favorite math person as well as personal hero. And so he's emphasized the difference between the district's current offer, which we consider 5%. To be clear, they threw some stuff at us to get the 5%, like extra hours in the day. But clearly they're showing they have the money to pay us and we'd like it. If it's a raise, we're not going to work extra for it. We simply would like that money. So a 5% offer, which the district clearly has the ability to pay, versus our 7% proposal, which is an average 7% increase in our salary every year for 4 years, which we think could make a meaningful dent in the leapfrogging issue and retain teachers, is actually remarkably achievable. As you can see, in year 1, we're apart by less than $1 million, 770,000. Year 2, also less than $1 million. You might ask yourself, where are we going to get that money from? There's been, although the district has provided very few specifics and hasn't changed their theoretical pot of money since February, when they didn't have the most recent state aid data, for example, the funds are available. we have come up with some solutions that we could present to the district. To me, B1 is the most obvious. If you look at the district's budgeted expenditures versus actual payments for salary over the last several years, consistently more is budgeted than actually spent. How much more? It averages $4 million a year more. We need something like $1 million to pay for our gap. The money is staring you in the face. Please give us that money on Thursday of next week. If you wanted to go deeper, that to me, clearly, obviously there's money there. But if you wanted to go deeper, we speculated in some other ways for the district. We looked at our ridiculously high turnover rate and the fact that that would change with a step and lane system plus a significant raise. We would go to being maybe a decently paid district compared to some of our competitors. And that would prevent turnover. Turnover is obviously expensive in terms of hiring new teachers. That estimate of 330,000 is actually extremely conservative. If you use our newest number of what it might cost to rehire and train teachers, it would actually be double that. But regardless, there's a significant pool of money. Our team also feels that the district is spending a large amount of their budget on hiring teachers from outside the district to fill contracted positions because we can't find teachers, especially in high needs areas, that are legally required for special education, especially. And so they're paying outside contractors a significant amount of money, $1.4 million to cover those positions. Hopefully we could do some of that internally and that would easily cover the gap. In number 4, there's some thoughts about if we really needed to, freezing some parts of the budget to come up with $1 million. Again, to me, not even necessary. We've already come up with more than $5 million so far. Clearly, the money is available. And then the final point I want to make, the district, especially early on, was very hesitant with the step and lane system. And one of the things they were most worried about was the long-term liability of a step and lane system. The idea that even when our contract expires, people will continue to gain experience and therefore they will move to different steps. You know, like next year, I'll go from year 15 to year 16, and there's going to be a raise baked into that step and lane system. And the thought was, is that unsustainable? Is that dangerous? Is that risky for the district? I think clearly the opposite is true. It's about the most conservative possible way for the district to budget responsibly into the future. Over the course of our 4-year contract, we have different step and lane systems, and the gap between year 1 and year 2 is going to be an average increase of 7%. And between year 2 and year 3, the average gap is going to be an increase of 7%. And that's true from year 3 to year 4. But in year 4, our final grid system in our step and lane, that just becomes the agreement. It becomes permanent unless we agree to something different in our next contract negotiation. So if we don't agree to anything after the end of our 4-year current contract, well, the contract we're hoping to negotiate, when it finishes 4 years from now, we are simply on the grid, the final step and lane grid that we proposed. And on that grid, the gaps between steps in terms of like gaining a year of experience average 2% or less. That is extremely conservative. It's way lower than the inflation rate over the last 50 years. It's dramatically lower than the inflation rate that just killed us in our last contract. It's something that the district can budget for today, for the future, forever. And the idea that they're locked into some kind of untenable position, the opposite is true. They are guaranteed the most conservative possible raises going forward. Each teacher after that 4th year simply moves up a step. The people closest to retirement actually retire. The district stops paying the highest salaries that there are. Extremely conservative future situation. There's some other justifications up there in 2 and 3 in terms of the obvious need to have something predictable for employees, for our HR department, for the hundreds of teachers that we currently have to go back through their data and find their accurate last names and credits. But the one thing I want to emphasize, let's see. Oh, and number 2, in terms of the accuracy of our data, I've spent time with a lot of members at the high school lately, and we have found some significant issues through the salary review process that has generally taken a month or more for individual members. There's some significant problems. A good friend of mine who has more than 20 years of experience, the district salary review just got back to her with a number that she's likely missing $18,000 over the last 16 years. The district obviously owes her $18,000 plus interest, which wasn't offered. Interest for sure on those 16 years, by the way. We'll insist on that, I hope. But to me, it also brings forward an equity issue. The inaccuracies of the data, the underpayment over years is especially true for people that have taken maternity leaves, for example, or any kind of child rearing leave. Those are where the biggest mistakes seem to lie so far. So from a basic equity and fairness and accountability and planning, and it's just so obvious who the solution. It's staring us in the face. We've reached the end of negotiations. The district so obviously has the money to solve the problem. They came with nothing today. I can only hope and assume that on Thursday, they will agree to a step and lane system with 7% raises on average per year. And we look forward to that offer.
And I'm just going to put out there that we have also heard concern over whether or not this is the will of our employees. And we continually ask our employees, is this the will of our unit? And as you can see, the fact that these people all showed up saying that this is their will, but in our most recent vote on this, 89% of our members have charged the ITA with not agreeing to a comprehensive tentative agreement that does not include a step and lane salary schedule. And for us, step and lane is the only option at this point. And I realize that you have no response.
Other than thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Do you want us to also present? I have a little bit of extra data related to our parental leave proposal that I can leave you with before sending you on a caucus? Or do you want to take this and break?
In terms of caucus, we will not have an offer on salary tonight. I didn't want there to be any, and appreciate you saying next Thursday. I didn't want there to be any confusion with regard to that if we were to caucus. So I think probably we're if everyone is willing, we keep forging ahead.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. We just have a little bit left. I have some additional data, and Callie and Molly, why don't you come down? Because we're going to talk about parental leave. I see, actually, can we take like 5 minutes?
Sure. Do you want us to leave? It's easier.
I see some people who like this was their number one priority, so they're gonna take off.
Okay.
I'm gonna take a personal bio break, and went to city council once, and they were like, after public comment, we always take a 5-minute caucus, and it lets the room reset. So
All right. Thank you very much.
we presented for the first time in any level of detail, although, you've had it since January, so not the first time you've seen it, a proposal on leaves of absence that would enhance our paid parental leave. And I brought my team of awesome moms to the table with me. And I'm going to let Callie was momming last week, so couldn't be here for the original presentation, but Allie's going to speak to why this why this proposal is so important to her and her family, and then we'll get into a little bit of data that helps answer some of the questions that came up last week.
Okay, so my own personal journey of kind of having a family in general started in 2015, 2016. After experiencing a miscarriage, and receiving the vague and disheartening diagnosis of kind of unidentified infertility, my husband and I turned to a fertility clinic. Some of the local ones clearly are in Syracuse. And so as I'm talking, I'm going to go in through fertility treatment information, actual pregnancy information, post-pregnancy information, and then various data points that affected my personal story. So I just wanted to kind of give everybody a heads up because it fits multiple parts of our proposal. So our journey began in February and quickly became both emotionally and physically demanding. Fertility treatments require frequent appointments, so weekly, sometimes bi-weekly blood draws, ultrasounds. Oh, sorry, I'm speaking very fast. Sorry. And then also hormone injections as a secondary educator. And I was very fortunate. This meant leaving home at 5 a.m. to get up to Syracuse. I live in Dryden. To make a 6:15 appointment before starting my workday. For elementary teachers, this might mean leaving directly after school due to the start of their workday. These procedures aren't really optional if you're trying to have a family in this format. They are essential medical care dictated by like your hormone levels and ovulation cycles. So it's not really, I can't go, hey, I can schedule a Tuesday ultrasound. That's not really how the whole system works. IVF specifically involves multiple medical procedures, including surgeries like egg retrieval, which requires 3 to 4 days recovery. I was falsely told it may take a day. Don't ever believe that if you ever have to go through that. An embryo implantation, which often necessitates time off. Even with strategic planning, if my IVF procedure happened in the school year, which I fortunately it did not, I would have needed approximately 5 sick days just for IVF care related care alone. In 2016-2017 school year, we were very fortunate. I kind of titled this year, Yay Pregnancy, but Goodbye Sick Days. After one IVF cycle, my husband and I were extremely lucky to be successful, not just with one baby, but we started actually with triplets. Once pregnant, like weeks, between the weeks 4 and 12, monitoring did not stop. I had to go up weekly. I faced weekly checkups and treatments, including transfusions. That was part of the treatment care. The first day of school, I came in to set up to start the year, trying not to vomit because being pregnant with triplets is really horrible in that sense. And then, but I accidentally overexerted myself, causing a hemorrhage and the loss of one of the triplets. I was then placed on modified bed rest, meaning I could not work and had to take medical leave. So that was for 8 weeks. At this point and throughout the rest of the pregnancy, I was carrying identical twins, which automatically placed me in a high-risk pregnancy category, requiring more frequent medical monitoring the whole entire time. So a snapshot of kind of the sick time that I had used, my starting sick day balance was 70 days, used during the pregnancy with 8 weeks of medical leave. Throughout that whole pregnancy time, I used 37.5 days, meaning for my remaining days before maternity or for maternity leave, it was 36.5. Family sick days used were 1.5 out of 5 available. And then maternity leave, C-section, because I had identical twins, I also had to have a C-section. So there was 40 days right there. So basically I ended the 2017, 2018 school year balance was 0 sick days, trying to return back to school with 2 identical twin infants and pumping. So remaining balance after all of that and medical appointments for that first year was 5.5 sick days. Things that occurred during that first year is I had my kids in March, and that actually meant they went through infancy a lot in the summer. So I was able to take kind of that whole time off. I did have to take unpaid childcare leave at some point. A lot of their sick time, luckily, was during that summer month. I did not know babies could really contract RSV in June, July, but apparently mine were lucky enough to do that. Ended up in the hospital for a couple days, so we had that fun. So the context is really if 1 in 10 babies born in the US are born prematurely, my twins were part of that. The same requires NICU time. So that also took time out of that family bonding experience in terms of being at home, setting things up. So as we're looking at sick days, those are just kind of important factors to kind of relate to all of this. After all of the appointments and sick days needed, the remaining balance after infant medical appointments, again, was 5.5. And I am also a massively fortunate person where my kids, when they got the sniffles or a light fever, I have family in town because they moved out. That is not the case for many of our staff. And so I am like, I know I'm beyond fortunate for that access. In 2018-2019 school year, I became pregnant again. Thankfully, it was a healthy singleton pregnancy, but this one only required routine prenatal care, which again drew from my limited sick bank days that I came back with, so only 5.5 to roll over. I knew my due date in June would mean I would lose the remaining sick days regardless, so I used them to ensure I could care for my sons and maintain a healthy pregnancy, basically just kind of using them out. And so when I ran out, I applied to the sick bank to support the entire stretch of my maternity leave, which was just luckily the month of June. It's also worth noting, just to say, when I came back the next year when my daughter was an infant, I also started the school year out with scratch, like no sick days except for the ones that you naturally get in the beginning. It's just really worth noting the inequity experience under these current policies. While I, the birthing parent and New York State employee, exhausted my sick days and had to apply for supplemental leave, my husband, who worked at Borg Warner at the time, received a progressive and generous leave package. 4 weeks of full pay, an additional 4 weeks at partial pay, and then plus he got a lovely welcome gift for our newborn daughter. I am not asking for a gift, but I am asking for a policy that reflects the values that we are teaching to our students. If we, our district, are committed to anti-marginalization equity, we must mirror those principles in our benefits. Education is a female-dominated field. Our contract policies should acknowledge the unique challenges that working mothers face, particularly when building and caring for a family that requires medical intervention or support. So please work with us to create family leave policy that recognizes fertility treatment, pregnancy complications, high-risk pregnancies as medical events eligible for protected leave, ensures that teachers don't have to deplete their entire sick bank simply for growing their families, even within that first year of their life, if your kids are sick or need other medical treatments, and provides flexibility and understanding for parents of preemies or children with medical complications. This is not just a personal story, it's a common reality for a lot of our staff and families. I'm hoping that we can lead with compassion and equity and make our district a place where educators can care for our families without sacrificing their future or well-being. And then to kind of move on from here, that was my own little thing. We've been looking at like data for pediatric doctors because part of our proposal is using sick bank time for that first year of life if needed after we've exhausted the sick days within our personal time. Basically, Northeast Pediatrics recommends minimally 6 baby visits. So like at 1, 2, 4, 6, 9, and 12 months. And then I just kind of quickly Googled, and from the Mayo Clinic, it basically says in terms of how often may children get sick, just to kind of keep this in mind as well. It varies a lot amongst kids, but babies, toddlers, and preschoolers can have as many as 12 colds a year and still be normal. Every time your child has a fever, you cannot take them to a daycare. So if you were relying on that, that knocks you out of that system. That also counts for if you're thinking about all the immunizations, a lot of babies do get fevers the day after. So then you're taking time off for the actual doctor's appointment and then the post-fever day of the actual shots that kind of occur within those times. The number, in terms of colds, the number may be higher for children who are attending daycare if they are there versus whenever they're in school. It's also normal for kids to have symptoms lasting up to 14 days in terms of a cold. So children can clearly have fevers for a long time, which many of you are all parents who understand this. And then sometimes the cough can last up to 6 weeks. So just kind of keeping that in mind in terms of our data as we're looking for this proposal.
And then as we started kind of reflecting and listening back to and reading back on the transcript from last time and thinking about, there's a monetary ask involved in the sick bank, in the use of sick bank proposal and the expansion of sick day proposal, that got us doing some wondering and some speculation. So earlier, you had put forward a prior salary proposal that offered an increased sick day buyback. And at that time, you said that this was in part because the funding for sick days comes from a different budget line than the general salary line, so that was something that could be leveraged. We recognize that proposal has been withdrawn, but it got us wondering on the overall value and cost of that proposal compared to our parental leave proposal, since both of those proposals were leveraging sick days and the sick day budget line. We did a little, and Callie just risked all the vulnerability telling her pregnancy story, but I did math, and this is my math, so I'm risking that vulnerability. Your proposal was upon retirement after at least 20 years of service in the district, the teacher will receive the following. It was $6,000 plus the 0.33 daily rate of the accrued sick days, capped at a maximum of $20,000. So looking at that is, for a person who qualifies, would be an $8,000 per member cost on your proposal. So I went and I compared over the last 5 years the numbers of babies that were born to the number of people retired. What we found is as our 5-year average, we are averaging about 15 babies born compared to 19.6, so 20 people retiring. So fairly comparable. But then I took our cost of adding an additional 21 days. So the 6 prenatal days and the 15 extra leave days, because we already have days, went with the median salary, costed it out for a day's rate. So a lot of speculative math, but just to kind of show the trends. And what we have is that our proposal is coming in at around 111,000 as opposed to the 160,000. So we see a way that our parental leave proposal can not only better support recruitment and retention by incentivizing people in the career who are having babies to, stick with us after having those babies, and that it, as opposed to incentivizing people leaving, and that the 5-year trend data shows that it would actually be more cost effective to incentivize in that way. And then we really, I think need to consider are how many sick days does the district annually expect to go unused and things like that. But we are also open to questions on the proposal, and Aurora and Molly have been doing a lot of the research on the proposal. So they're up here as the experts on the proposal.
Just a clarifying question on your math. Does that include the sub cost associated with that, or?
No, because we figured if you're paying the subs, no matter what, the subs are the subs, right? Because whether you're taking it as an unpaid leave day or you're taking it as a sick
Oh,
day,
okay.
we're paying the sub. Right? Because people don't go on their maternity, very few people go on their maternity leave and then come back immediately. So
Got it. Okay.
most of our members, for those who don't know, have their babies, they exhaust their sick days and then they take an unpaid childcare.
Just on a philosophical question, as I do sometimes, are we trying to create a system that would want to get our sort of new parents to rejoin the teaching ranks because they would have a less, less onerous restrictions on their ability to either be here or not? Is that what we're trying?
I
Is that the
mean,
intent?
we are really focused on in that portion. It's getting through that 4th trimester in a supportive way. So the 12 weeks from baby's birth is that period is so critical for both parents and babies. And right now,
Yes.
we can't.
I've
be
been
paid
through
for
it.
that.
I'm aware of that process.
So with that, I don't know if people would come back, if more people would come back earlier, if they were better supported in the 12 weeks versus 6 weeks. I don't know. That's speculative.
Because actually, and I don't know, it's hard to, there is a conversation to be had, and I know Mary and I were talking about this in our prep a little bit of what, in a profession where we have, many folks who are having children and, they're coming out of college and they're setting up their lives. How do we do this in a way that makes the most sense? Overall, I think where there's some of these pieces that I think we need to dive into and figure out how to do this. But as a general concept, it's something we can definitely continue talking about. But I think there's always, we want to be really precise on what is it trying to incentivize and what are we trying to disincentivize? What is it that we want to get to?
So I think that in this case, there are 3 problems that we're trying to address, and it's not really about incentivizing so much as caring for our teachers as professionals and as humans. So the 3 problems that we're trying to address, the first are prenatal care days. That is trying to address the issue of teachers feeling like they cannot take those days before they have their baby because they are saving those days up for their leave. So the extra prenatal care days is addressing that issue, which we've heard from our members. The second issue that we're trying to address is that 4th trimester being such a key moment for babies and for caregivers. So we're not trying to incentivize anything. We're trying to honor that is really important. And we believe that in honoring that is really important and supporting teachers through that, we are going to be able to recruit and retain better. Catherine has experience of teachers leaving because they did not feel supported in that way. And then the third problem that we are trying to address is the problem of teachers coming back to work and having no sick days, and then babies get sick, or you need to have well visits. And I see some babies in the room who maybe experience this. So we're trying to address three problems. It's not really about like gaming teachers to incentivize different things so much as acknowledging our humanity and acknowledging what we need in order to both be professionals and have
So,
children.
You know, I want to be very clear. I don't, when I say incentivize, I'm talking about like we have a contract, and Catherine and I spend a lot of time trying to piece through like, what is this cause and what's the cause and effect? So when I say that, I want to be very clear. I'm not here to get into to not honor the humanity of the mothers in our room, in our city, in our school district. And so I just want to be very clear. Like as a father and as someone who's raised children, I take that kind of personally that you would say that. So, you know, like let's be like, that's not the conversation. That's all I'm saying. So all I'm saying is when we get into contractual language, what are our causes and effects? So that's the nuance here.
I want to jump in. So I too celebrate that there are children in the room and that they are listening and hearing a collective, what I hope will be a collective approach to solving a systemic problem that I think we can all agree is a problem. And so how we have that conversation, and is it, what I'm consistently wondering is right now, the way the structure is set up is inherently flawed, right? When you need the time, it's not there, just based on, in general, the timing of when folks enter the profession and begin to have children. So as a collective, how can we look at that equation that we've created and shift it? And I get the means we have right now to do that is a contract. And it would be great if we could have a conversation outside of a contract of 3 different ways or 5 different ways that we could do that. Because it is something to solve. And right now, trying to solve it in this fixed allotment is where I think we're on I'm not seeing all of the creative solutions. So I think if we're looking at the equation that we've set up and the collective and what's in the sick bank and what would that look like, I trust we can come up with some pretty creative solutions. Just don't know how we want to have that, I guess, brainstorm is what I'm trying to say around that.
So we started out by looking at what private employers are offering. And we kind of exhausted looking at the New York State paid family leave program, because originally we're like, well, public employers can elect to opt into that. And we're just like, oh, we should just elect to opt into that. But then as we started brainstorming that through and working through like what would be the impact to the district, the piece that makes our employment unique as compared to other employers participating in those programs is, in those other programs, when someone leaves, their work gets kind of divided amongst their coworkers and they don't fill that vacancy while they're gone and everybody makes do. And for us, we have the substitute element, right? So the substitutes are having substitutes to cover your class is an important part of how schools function. So that's what got us to, okay, that's not going to work. And we looked at what other unions around us are doing, and it's really similar to what we came up with. Do you have any other, like, off the top, I'm asking you off the top of your head, do you know of any other like really creative solutions that you've heard of?
Yeah, there's several. One, the minor teachers
Right.
have, they now get up to 6 weeks of paid leave, full-time. Obviously, they negotiated that in their other contracts. Actually, if you want to keep talking, I can pull up.
Because I agree, like looking at the private sector, we're not,
Right.
It's a
we're
tough
not.
comparison.
We're not, it's not us.
Yeah.
you-
But we don't want to go down that. I think, yeah.
I think
Here we go.
we're optimistic that there's, and that's my point that I'm trying to make here. So we're optimistic that there's a way that we can solve this. And as Bob and I sometimes say, or Catherine and I, like, we just want to make sure we structure it in a way that, gets us all the pieces we need.
Have you come up with anything though? Like what?
So I think we have some ideas that we'd like to workshop with perhaps a smaller cohort at some point if you're interested.
Another option would be
Be-
write them out, bring them next week and we can workshop them then. We have a whole day next week.
Right.
Sure. It's certainly an option. My reticence, if I'm being honest, is I think if we want to engage in when we're workshopping some of these proposals, language matters very much in the final contract, and we're having these discussions, particularly when it relates to leaves. There's a lot of very unique circumstances that you and I have discussed. So I get a little bit worried about the implications that it has on specific folks who, if folks, could be identified, and oftentimes there's scenarios that we've worked through. So that's what gives me pause. Also because while I think we agree that this is very important, we'd like to figure out a way to do this and perhaps even be really innovative about it. There's also times where the contract works until it doesn't. And I don't want to get too much caught in a deficit model conversation as well about specific folks. Like, hey, let's talk about this one that didn't work and why it didn't work. So those are my concerns.
I feel confident that we don't need to get down to that personal level to be able to have a conversation about a systemic issue. I mean, I feel confident that we can do it.
We'll give it some, we'll have to do it then.
I'm wondering, oh, sorry, that was so loud. I'm wondering if maybe, since this is the last item on our agenda anyway, right? Or we're almost
No,
there.
because there's one more.
Okay, I'm just wondering if maybe it would make sense to for you all to take a caucus, and if you have an idea, it might make sense to talk about broader ideas first and see if, like Catherine is saying, we could talk about it without the specifics. And then if it really,
Yeah.
if there seems to be a moment where it's like, this needs to be a smaller group, then we might consider it. But for now, it doesn't, it feels like tabling it to a small group would just
Thank
be
you.
less transparent.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for your story. We appreciate it very much. And I'm also wondering, the talk about the humanity of it. There are so many situations over the course of any particular person's career, and there's so many things that happen to us as human beings that you could have a teacher who is later in his career who's really had difficulties, cancer, et cetera, et cetera. So they don't have a lot of time built up at the end of the career even. And yet now they have an elderly parent that they're taking care of. And much, unfortunately, the life cycle is similar sometimes in terms of babies and our older parents. And so I'm wondering if we approach this less with an eye towards one particular set of human experiences, right? Prenatal care and sort of like the broad spectrum of human occurrences that we all face and just try to develop it that way.
Well, I mean, so one thing I think is important to notice, I just got a handful of notes
Oh, good.
that all say the same thing. That considering that this item has been on the agenda since January, that June 5th seems a little late for creative thinking. that our members are recognizing and really feeling the frustration of the fact that on June 30th, we will be working on an expired contract that does not have salary provisions unless we negotiate something different.
Mhm.
So the thought of expanding the time to convene a committee to creatively think and debate all of our options does not respect the urgency that our members feel over resolving a contract. We also in here really, I think it's important to remember that our contract already is very specific and very limiting on this particular experience of life. So while I would love to talk about all of the ways that we can honor all of the human experiences of life, what we currently have for this particular experience is insufficient to meet the needs of our members. And with a newer, younger workforce, 47% of our people being hired in the past 3 years, we are trending younger. We are trending towards childbearing years for a large part of our membership. So this really is at this moment a priority. We also are seeing, as our state is becoming one of the most inclusive and supportive states for parents and people having young children, our policy is nowhere near that. We have our workforce is trending to millennial and Gen Z workers anyway, who have all of the hiring trends show that they don't stick with one employer for their entire career. They don't stick with one profession for their entire career. They go where the good jobs for whatever situation they're in at the time are. We have a retention crisis. We have a recruitment crisis. The trends that I was looking at, like 70% of people stay because of good parental leave supports. That's huge, especially with with younger people. So I think that right now we really need to look at who are we serving and how are we serving them, and whether or not this is a thing that we really do believe. And I'm fine with talking about the details of how we do it, but we need to do this.
Bob, you asked for some examples. I'm just gonna throw out. Oh, sorry. Well, I'm gonna give you a couple. All right, so there's 12 sick days and 6 weeks of paid family leave. That's new Alzheimer contract. Some from others outside of our region, 6 or 8 weeks of paid leave, not from accruals. Some are tied to whether you have reached tenure status or not. 4 weeks of paid leave, not from accruals, up to 12 days minus the cost of a sub for some type of approved leave. Some convert unused personal days to parental leave days. Up here. 10 additional days of accumulated sick leave for bonding time. Non-birthing parent can utilize 10 days from accrued sick leave for post-bonding. So there's a lot of language out there. Just what's going to work for this district and for our members, but it's not an uncommon practice, especially in today's world.
Thank you.
And our proposal does actually address a lot of other types of leave as well. We've been focusing a lot on the parental leave because the parental leave is a sizable change. But this one also gets into the fact that we currently have no bereavement days. And people are constantly asking me, what about my bereavement days? And I'm like, I can't find them in the contract. I'm like, yes, because we don't have them. We use our sick days for bereavement. There's personal leave, professional days, mentoring days. We really looked at our leave practices and said, what are all the needs that our people have in short-term leaves, and really focused in on short-term leaves, but the parental leave is hugely important.
Okay, maybe now's the time for that caucus.
Absolutely. How long do you want?
It's 6 o'clock. Were you all gonna eat tonight or, okay?
We will, the thing about putting teachers in a room together is we will have great conversation for as long as you need us to. So you tell us what you think will be adequate to meet your needs.
45 minutes? Yeah,
Yeah.
or half hour?
Half hour.
30 minutes.
30 minutes?
Okay.
6:30.
Mary, shoot me a text if you need more time.
Sorry about that. Sorry. Writing a note. I was writing a note, I knew exactly what to say. And I.
I want to first say that did not take this long because it was pouring rain out. I didn't want to, we're actually working. You know, we've had an ambitious agenda. When we first met, whenever that first day was, and when we exchanged proposals, we've had a really ambitious agenda. So I feel we want to recognize the work that both sides have done in the committees. And so when we talk about going into committee and writing things, it really is that we've been very successful doing that. And there's a lot of intricacies. We've spent the entire time, we didn't eat or anything. We spent the entire time talking about especially the prenatal, that encompassed almost the entire time we were together. So there are a lot of intricacies, and we're here to give some first thoughts on things, but we definitely will need to collaborate again. And the reason I mentioned the ambitious agenda is I think both sides wanted to like make it there by June 12th. I'm not sure like everything is going to be done by June 12th. Right. We will certainly all give it the college try, but I think we just need to recognize like if there are certain things that are not agreed to, it doesn't mean we stop collaborating together, right? And we continue to work towards this because it's always an ongoing effort that we very much appreciate working with you on. So first thinking. And there's not a lot here for being gone so long. It really is like there's some details that we're going to have to talk to our board about, talk to folks on, you know, just continue thinking and also collaborate with you folks. But we feel like teachers shouldn't have to be worrying about prenatal medical appointments and trying to save some of their sick leave for when they have the child, right? So our thought is like, use your accumulated sick time for the prenatal and don't worry about when it gets to the date of delivery. On the date of delivery, the birthing teacher would get access to ITA sick leave bank for a certain number of days. It currently, the number of days that teachers can take after birth is 30, yeah?
And
Depending.
after, they would have had to exhaust their leave already.
And they would have already had to exhaust leave. But what we're thinking is they'd have access to ITA sick leave bank for a certain number of days. I think you're requesting 60 right now, and it currently is 30. So, you know, we'll have to talk about how this all works. And we recognize the comment. I thought maybe Aurora made it, but if not, whoever made it, that like 70% of employees who have good, you know, parental leave stay with the employer. So we're hoping that if a teacher stays for whatever it is, X number of years after having access to these days, that the district would then reimburse the sick leave bank. those number of days so that it's a cycle that isn't always depleted by ITA. So it's an incentive for teachers to stay. We don't expect the ITA sick leave bank to take the full brunt of it. You initially allow them to utilize those days, and then the district reimburses the sick leave bank after the teacher stays for some number of years.
And it gets at the part that we're talking about earlier, which is for our teachers new in their career, that's often the same window of time where they would be having children but they wouldn't have the accumulated days to take.
Yeah.
So it meets that need as well.
What about first year of baby's life?
We didn't get past this because there's so many really, I mean, I don't want to, I don't want it to come off as like complaining. There are so many nuances when it comes to how do we pay for things? How do we budget for things? How do we who goes first? What, right? That I don't want to get into here and now, but it took us this long to just get this concept to this point. And there's a lot more work to do. So we're wondering if just in a very conceptualized way, if this is something you're interested in pursuing, then we individually can spend some time trying to really hammer out the details.
So are you saying that maybe I'm confused.
Yeah, me too. I think we have clarifying questions.
Yeah.
It seemed very clear to us when we.
But
No, it didn't.
But we were gone for a bit. So if I can just add,
Yes.
we're trying to shift the equation so that essentially the ITA sick bank would be a bank for people without those sick days accrued to take for the first 60 days that then the district would reimburse
So
upon so many years of service. This is assuming when you talk about provision 8, A and B, and additional days that would be needed at the first day of the first year of the child's life, that the employee would have some sick days accrued because for the care, the family leave care, that was covered by the bank.
So are you suggesting that when a person gives birth, their leave comes out of the sick bank, not out of their personally accrued days?
That was part of our discussion, and we ultimately landed on, if you, on the date of delivery, if you have 20 more of your own sick leave days, you keep them.
Yes.
Okay.
Ring the bell. Ring the bell. That's an agreement.
So.
Because
So
you're going to need those days. That teachers, yes.
days, just in the prenatal period, just use your 6 days. And you don't have to worry about using up your sick days because when you give birth, you are going to get 60 sick bank days. And they're just going to be sick bank. You don't need to use your own accrued days, just 60 days from the sick bank. The sick bank is now covering the 60 days when babies are born.
Right now.
And then if a member stays with us for a certain number of years, ICSD will reimburse the sick bank.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
And
the, now,
I understand.
a little caveat is that it's 60 days, but it might not be that much if the teacher has baby in mid-June, right? It's 60.
So one of the things that I
Calendar
don't like about the way it's currently written
Yeah.
is that it says the number of days, but what it really should be is sick bank to cover up to 12
Yeah.
school weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like that, I think will make it way easier to explain to people because depending on when your baby is born, there could be 4 days in those 12 weeks if they're born in like June, or
Yeah.
there could be
Yeah.
if there's a week of break. So I think that saying the first 12
Yeah.
weeks
Yeah.
Of baby's
Yeah.
life.
of baby's life
Right.
any absences from work would be paid from the sick bank.
And some of that time might be moot because baby is born on June 15th,
Right,
right? And most of those 12 weeks will be during the summer.
right. And then we only
We-
take,
there's-
we only give that person like 10 sick bank days because there were only 10 school days and they continue, go on summer, come back. Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying
Yeah.
question? What about, we have, number 3 is for non-birth giving parents, and would that also be from the sick bank, or is that using your?
We didn't get there.
Okay.
I mean, this really was like, we went through multiple iterations, which isn't important to go into detail, but there was a lot of iterations we went through to land here.
And then, so there'd be no limit to, right now we have a sick bank restriction that if you're in your first year, you have capped sick bank days, but this wouldn't matter because you're having a child and it's the same for everybody, right?
It's the same for everybody having a child.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I'm interested to see it more in
Yeah,
writing.
I feel like it's intriguing, definitely.
Yeah, so
We didn't want to like, if you were like, this is going to work for us, we didn't want to spend time trying to meet it out.
Maybe also just recognizing that some people like Callie, who even with the sick bank, she had to leave.
Oh, okay.
But in Callie's story, she had already exhausted what she would have come back with before her babies were born. So maybe then like additional sick days can be like maybe that piece of within that first year of a baby's life, but if additional sick bank could be used if you don't have your own sick days, maybe some, because I think that first year is important too.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing that the first year is important. I'm just for constructive conversation. What we're trying to get at is that, if we're doing the math on, as teachers come in, let's say they work 3 years, 4 years, they're going to have 45 to 80 days that they've accrued. They will have used some. So the number is going to be between, 30 and 60 or whatever that number is. We could look at it. Our hope would be that by not quote, penalizing them or taking us out from that, like basically we're solving the middle problem. So then the days that are tied to you as an individual, and then if those would, the days would be tied, the individual days would be for the before and after. That's sort of what we were trying to hope to solve, because
Yeah.
one of the pieces of the language of what you all presented made it's kind of challenging to figure out just sort of like the unlimited, it was like an unlimited amount during a year, just trying to think like how to figure that out. So but happy to talk about it more.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's why we brought the Mayo Clinic data and where we've got at least 8 baby well visits are recommended, and then it's like could be, and it's hard to calculate for the unknown colds that young babies get.
Right, which is why if we solve for what we know, like we know this, then
Right,
that's
so
that's a step in that direction.
So my question would be, I'm thinking of a particular person who was a first year teacher, took their job and found out like the second day of school that they were expecting, had a tough pregnancy, used their days, and was already on sick bank by the time they had their baby. And because they were first year, they were limited to 10 days. Person no longer works for the district because it just couldn't make it work. But if that person were to come back, they still have a baby that needs to be cared for. So they're definitely going to be coming back with no sick days. So how do we support them in the first year of their baby's life if they came back with no sick days? And I think it would be few cases, but a harm to one is a harm to all. We want to support all new parents. So I'm just thinking as you're thinking through, knowing that's the beginning of an idea and that you were asking for our first draft thinking on whether this is a road worth going down. I'm hearing it's a road worth going down, and I'm saying, please also consider if someone were to find themselves in that situation, how would we want to handle it?
So this is where I would say, I think we've had great success and writing out second drafts
Yeah.
in collaboration and joint revisions.
Yeah.
Because it surfaces the, the multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
In a way that's really productive. So I would propose a joint revision of this and getting into, I know we did not touch on number 3 for non-birth parents or number 8, and to work through some of that by the next session,
which is a week from now.
which is a week from this.
And I would definitely want Aurora to be part of that. So that means Aurora is going to need to find some time to be part of that. Maybe like, do you have any time? No.
I mean, I would be happy, I would be okay not being part of it. If you had to do it during the school day. Well, we have to talk about who's coming on Thursday, but I don't want to miss 2 days of class. So class. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. We'll figure it out.
Would love to be part of it, but I wouldn't want to hold up the process. I'd rather we have something next week.
Appreciate that.
Ooh,
But that, I can't imagine that's gonna take in the morning.
oh, David's going to be available next week.
I,
for
I'm
half a day.
taking the half day for the interview for German that we have, but I can't imagine that's gonna take my full half day.
Yeah,
I can't imagine what, 1, 2?
I don't think we have 15 Germans.
So,
candidates.
but that would leave me time that I could meet to talk next Tuesday morning.
I can make Tuesday morning work.
That gives us time this weekend to gather all the information we need to bring together.
Okay. I think that it's definitely worth going down this road. I think that that's. Thank you for bringing the creative thinking.
Thank you.
Awesome. We only have one more thing on our agenda for tonight, and this is another one that we're not going to be able to get like really into. But we have a few questions. So we see that that you wanted to talk about the proposal to make some adjustments to retiree health insurance. And as we read through it, part 1, then just changing the open enrollment period to regular health insurance. I totally understand that that is a proposal that is really just to help with the workflow around Thanksgiving. That part we are okay with. For the retirement piece, we, in order to even consider this, we have the riders on the 2 plans, what we're currently offering, what we're looking to offer. But what we don't have is the complete rider on the current active health insurance. So in order to know whether those plans are equal to or better than the health coverage, we need that rider. And the earlier we can get that, the more we're going to be able to take a look and actually compare it. And then that is really where we can't even have a real conversation before then. I will say this is a highly controversial one that has been brought to our attention with much skepticism and very strong emotion. And to that end, we do plan on inviting our legacy members, our retirees, to session as our invited guests on the 12th, because they're the ones who've experienced this. So while they're not voting members, they at least have the experience of doing this to be able to help us make good decisions. So.
Sure. And also we're going to invite a rep from EMV as well to come and answer questions so that we have some clarity around that.
Great. And we might also bring another LRS. Maybe you're not sure.
Mike may be joining us.
Okay.
Mike or Deb, someone. Just not sure yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Great. Sounds good.
Yeah. Great. That brings us to just housekeeping for June. So June 12th is our last scheduled session. We are set to begin at 9 a.m. And I know that we've said 4 hours, but we've all kind of cleared the whole day. Because why stop good work on the last session if you're making good work? Where are we meeting?
I mean, if we need to record, which I think is our intent, this is the room that's set up for it. Anywhere else would be a big I don't think we have the technological capabilities to shift. So I guess it's a matter of working to see if this has been booked or I don't know what our status is for this room.
I
We'll
feel
check.
like, I
Have a
feel like the
person work.
superintendent can pull rank
Yeah.
on the room. So, okay, the other piece about that is, since it is a contract day, but because we have done none of our negotiation sessions during contract time, we would like to be able to have all of our CAP members, the 13, 14 of us who are on that core list from the beginning, be able to attend the session, even though our contract currently says you can have 7 on a negotiating day. But since we haven't used them for the entire negotiating session, we're hoping that we could bring the whole team.
We're all just looking at each
We're like,
other.
Make the decision, yeah.
I'm
We can give you the.
I don't want to
list.
use, yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. we're not rejecting that out of hand. I'm want to be sure kids are not impacted if there's particular 1 or 2 of those that really need to be making sure that kids are going to pass regions or something. I don't know. I just want, like, just leave it open. We can talk offline about it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we have a wide scope of who our people are,
Yeah.
and these are not people who are going to sacrifice their kids to come here. They would figure out how to
Right.
make sure that they're there. Even if it's like, I have this one section that I need to teach, they'll pop out, teach the section, come back. So,
And it is true, we know that best practices, the sooner we can put those into Subfinder, the more likely we're gonna have a high quality sub for that coverage. So sooner we know and people can put it into the system, the better it's going to be for those students in the long run.
Well, having said that, then go ahead.
great. Thank you.
Ring the bell.
Yeah, so we just have, there we go. So yeah, we just have a few issues. I'll work on getting an agenda, and we'll connect. Who are we connecting with to talk about a second draft of the parental leave?
Yeah, send you an invite. Mary did.
Excellent. Thank you.
The time.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
all. Thank
Have a
you
good day.
thank you for
Stay
coming
dry.
so much.